In this video, we're going to talk about square root functions. Square root functions you learned about in Math 2 and I believe Math 3. Basically, it's any function that has a square root in it. Like this function has a square root, over here we have a square root, and then down here we have square roots. So these are all square root functions. Just a reminder, in case you forgot or don't know, the square root of x is the same thing as x to the 1/2. So anytime you see x to the 1/2, you can automatically change it to the square root of x. Okay, so let's get started solving. This is a very basic problem. Our goal is to get x by itself. To start off with, we do the opposite of what's there, just like we have our whole math career solving for x. So to get rid of the square root, you square both sides. So this goes away, and you get x over 2 equals 2 squared, which is 4. Okay? And then to get x by itself, x is being divided by 2, so we multiply by 2. So x equals 8. And then you can plug it back in. 8 over 2 is 4. The square root of 4 is 2. So it works. So it's always good to go back and double check to make sure that it works. If you have a square root on both sides, you square both sides. So square, as long as one of the square roots is by itself, you can go ahead and square both sides. So we get 2m minus 6 equals 3m minus 14, because the squared and the square root cancel out over here. So when we solve, just like basic algebra, get your letters on one side and your numbers on the other side. So you have negative 6 equals m minus 14. Last step to get m by itself, add your 14. M equals 8. Okay, so 2 times 8 is 16, minus 6 is 10, so you have the square root of 10 over here. 3 times 8 is 24, minus 14 is 10, so the square root of 10 over here. So the square root of 10 is equal to the square root of 10. It works, right? So let's go back. Next example. The square root of negative 10 plus 7p equals p. So again, our square root is on a side by itself. So we can go ahead and square it to get rid of it. What we do to one side, we have to do the other. So we have negative 10 plus 7p equals p squared. Okay. The squared tells us this is quadratic. So we want to get everything to the same side as a positive p squared. P squared is positive over here. So we're going to move everything to its side. So we're going to get rid of both these over here and add them over here. So get rid of them. So we have 0 equals p squared minus 7p plus 10. Remember, when you have a quadratic, you want it set equal to 0. Then you can factor, complete the square, or quadratic formula. This is a very factorable problem. So what multiplies to make 7 or 10 and has a sum of negative 7? Negative 5 and negative 2. Negative 5 times negative 2 is positive 10. Negative 5 plus negative 2 is negative 7. And then you're going to set each of them equal to 0. And when you solve over to the other side, you get p equals 5 and 2. So we say plug 5 in. 7 times 5 is 35. Minus 10 is 25. The square root of 25 is 5, which is what we started with. 2. Plug in 2. 7 times 2 is 14. 14 minus 10 is 4. The square root of 4 is 2, which is what we started with, 2. So that works. Okay? So that's your review of square root functions and how to solve them. So once you've completed this video, you can go on to your worksheet and do your odd problems on your worksheet. So make sure you do your odd problems. Again, don't forget that the square root of x is the same thing as x to the 1/2. So if you see 2x plus 4 to the 1/2, it's the same thing as the square root of 2x plus 4. Okay, so on to do your odd problems.